I recently had the privilege of having a conversation with the incredibly talented Erica Robinson, a traveler, educator, and storyteller who has embarked on a deeply personal project titled Under the Pencil. Through this project, Erica not only shares her intimate journey with cancer, but also opens up a platform for other women to express their own unique experiences. Drawing parallels between her competitive swimming days and her battle with cancer, Erica's story is one of resilience, community, and the power of personal representation. In this episode of TWiP, we dive deep into the emotions, insights, and inspirations behind Under the Pencil. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today on the show, I have the opportunity to sit down with Erica Robinson. She's, like I said in that little intro tease there, she's put together a project, a very important project called Under the Pencil. We're going to dive into what it's all about. Spoiler alert, it's about her journey and her desire to empower other people that have walked the same journey when it comes to cancer and diagnosis and dealing with it and communicating with others about what you're going through, all that stuff. So we're going to have a conversation about that project and that whole unfortunate world that a lot of us have been touched by, and just kind of what makes her tick as a photographer and as somebody who's using the medium to tell important stories or to shed light on important stories, thereby at the end of it, hopefully making the world a better place through the power of photography. So Erica Robinson, welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Hey, thank you so much. It's amazing. It's great. And thank you so much for not just the intro, but the trigger warning for people too. I think that that's really important to share right off the bat what we're going to be talking about, because it can get a little heavy at times. So we'll try and keep Absolutely. It light, of course, but just so that everyone's aware what the topic is on. I appreciate you doing that. That was really nice.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, and it's important. It's an important topic. And, it can't always be, the latest computer, AI, VR, and all that stuff. That, I think, and this is a good way to kick off the conversation, because the tools that we use and the tools that we obsess over all the time as photographers or just people that enjoy technology, in the end, they're devices to allow us to tell stories to other people. Right? And to share our experiences, and not just about, hey, I had this gorgeous looking lunch, let me share it with everybody. The tools, when used in a serious way, can really enlighten people and help people to let them know that they're not alone in their journey, or different ways that they can, or different things that they can do to make the journey less taxing, all these things. So thank you for putting this project together, and thank you for coming on the show. So I want to start with just sort of a background on you, on Erica Robinson. What makes you tick? We're going to dive into the project and all that, but just you as a person, what makes you tick? What motivates you? What's where do you want to be? If you could snap your fingers right now, what would everything look like around you? What are you stressing? What are you striving for in your life?
Oh, that is a big question. We went right in.
I just go straight for the bone marrow. It's like right in there.
Man. Well, I'd say there's something new every day, probably, that makes me tick. I have been a photographer nearly my whole life. I knew I wanted to be in the arts in some way. And where I went to high school didn't have too much in the form of art. So I went to a local community college and took some art courses there, took some photography classes there. That way I could see if that's really what I wanted to do. And it was. And so it spiraled for sure. But I think that there's something new every day that inspires me, whether it's a conversation with someone or a new plant that I've found. I'm very lucky. I live in Southern California, so I have all this beautiful flora and fauna. Or it's a hike with friends or something. I think there's something new every day that inspires me.
Yeah, it's same here. Yeah, and it's not. It's I don't know if it's every day, but for me, it's like there's seasons. I don't even know what the seasons are, but every now and then I get this wild hair, and I'm just obsessed over a particular topic, whether it's I don't know. It could be anything,
Oh,
not
for sure.
necessarily photography related, but then you dive down into that topic. I think that keeps it fresh, and it keeps us exposed, or at least me personally, exposed to different things, different ideas, different techniques, whatever. But in the context of this story, your Under the Pencil project. So let's start with the beginning of that journey to the inception
Absolutely.
and the kind of that project, the Under the Pencil project, coming to fruition. Let's just dive into it. How did it all start in the beginning?
Yeah, well, actually, so it wasn't even supposed to be a project. It wasn't. There was no intention for it to be a project, and I was incredibly disconnected from my cameras at that point. Like I said, photography is something that's been with me nearly my whole life, and my camera has always been the tool to help me express what I was trying to express and share the stories that I thought needed to be told. And at that point, in my cancer journey, I was really disconnected from my camera. The I couldn't figure out the way that felt appropriate for me to share what I was trying to share. Everything that I put out, I worked really hard on, but there's I feel like a lot of times there's this kind of pressure from the arts world to produce something when a trauma happens, whether it's to you or to your friends or to your family, or you see something happening. There's this kind of pressure to produce some form of art. And I felt that pressure immediately, actually, as soon as I got sick. So I had a big disconnect from my camera. And this was the point where I had made a photo, made a self portrait right after I came home from a terrible MRI. For those of us who have been in situations and had to get all sorts of different MRIs, you'll know what it means by getting a PICC line. Typically, when you're getting an MRI that requires an injection, you'll get that done through a vein, and you need that for contrast and such. And unfortunately, when I went in for this one, they couldn't find a vein because my veins had been completely trashed due to chemo.
Oh
And
wow.
so they told me I was going to get a deep vein ultrasound so that I could have a better MRI, a better outcome. And I thought that just meant that they were going to take the goo and stick it on my arm, and they were just going to find a better vein. I was very wrong. They wanted to do a PICC line, which meant that they had to do like a little surgery right on the inside of my arm to put an incision in and put a PICC line in directly to a catheter in directly to get the contrast. So in doing that, I just was at that point not in a very good place mentally. There was all sorts of unknowns that had still been going on, and every day it felt like I had to make a change to even just live. And this just kind of set me over the edge. So I came home and I made this portrait, and it felt wrong. It just didn't feel finished. It felt like an uncooked meal where it was, first of all, a terrible portrait, talking about like equipment and such. I didn't even set any lights up. I didn't set up a backdrop. I didn't set up anything to make what I would vision as, the perfect portrait. I used my wall in my living room, and I set up my camera, and I was holding the trigger behind my head. And so the portrait itself was not necessarily perfect in any way of the word, but that's exactly it, is that it wasn't supposed to turn into a project. This was something that I was creating as an art form for me to try and understand what was going on inside of myself. And once I finished it, I brought it up into my iPad, and at that point, writing was really my form of expression. And so I started writing all over this portrait. I wrote the medical jargon that was difficult to understand. I wrote the emotional side of it. I wrote the kind of like witty, sarcastic style of it that fits my personality, and it just spiraled from there. It was the first time that I felt heard, even if I was the only one listening to myself. I felt heard for the first time.
Wow. Wow. See, that's powerful. There's a bunch to unpack there, because I wanted to the just the part about the creativity or the creative journey, and how your mindset shifted once you were diagnosed. I want to explore that just a little bit. So the shift of
Sure.
mindset, or the pre-diagnosis creative mindset, not to put words in your mouth is, oh, this is what can I make next? This is exciting. How can I inspire people with my work, or how can I tell new stories with my work? And then the diagnosis happens. So assuming that was the optimistic perspective, was your mindset prior to the diagnosis, after the diagnosis, and after it had some time to set in, and before you started in earnest on this under the pencil project, how do you think it changed, or did it change at all? Like you say, people expect you to, oh, you're an artist, you must channel your pain so that we can all understand it better, and a lot of artists will resent that, like, hey, I'm this human, I don't want to always be an artist, I don't want to use my superpowers all the time. How did it affect you on the creative side?
So it shifted. It definitely shifted a lot of things.
Yeah.
First of all, I wasn't very used to having the camera being directed at me. I was very much not used to having the camera at me. I'm used to being the one behind the camera, talking with people or learning a new space and sharing that story, not about me. So now I'm going to be in the public eye. And again, even if I had no intention of making this necessarily public, it was something where it still felt invasive in a way that I wasn't used to. So I had to get used to that invasiveness, see it in a good way, and see it in a way that felt productive and felt real and felt raw, because the more honest I was with myself, the better I was able to portray that. I wasn't trying to create something that didn't exist. I was trying to share something that already existed, and it was just about the language of getting it across. So I think it shifted a lot of how I approach my photography from here on out.
Yeah. So, and it's a change, right? It's not a temporary, now I'm through that storm. Now it's more of a permanent, indelible kind of a directional change in your creative journey, right? After the diagnosis. Do you agree with that? That, okay, this thing happened, and now I'm just a different person. I'm a different artist, and I have different things to tell and different perspectives than a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. There's no going back, really. You have this experience that completely changes you as a human being. So there isn't any, it's not like, we were talking earlier about iOS systems and having to go back to an iOS system and update to an iOS system. Like, it's not like I can just shut down my iOS system, revert to one, and then come back to the other when I have all my firmware updates. Like, no, it's here, and it's here to stay. So
yeah, it's a ratchet, one direction only, whether you like it or not. On the project. Yeah, it's definitely a ratchet. On the Under the Pencil project, obviously, the inspiration is your own personal journey. What kind of inspired you to kind of dive in and share it more broadly and engage with other people going through the same thing? Was it like, where was that coming from? Was it coming from a place of me helping people is therapeutic for me, or was it more altruistic? Like, oh, I know what's going on with these people, so let me help them because I feel like what I'm doing helped me, so let me help them. How did that project kind of start forming in your brain?
So first, I think it had to do with the understanding of the uniqueness of every individual's diagnosis. So I was in a position where, I could have a clone, right? Let's say I have a twin, and my twin and I are diagnosed with the exact same disease at the exact same time, exact same size tumor, who knows, right? But there's something about us that's individually different, right? One of us could be married, one of us could have kids, one of us could live in California, the other could live in Ohio. Like, there's just so many different pieces to this puzzle that there's never it's not cookie cutter. And so I knew that from the very beginning, that I didn't want to be seen as a number in a hospital where they're just, diagnosing me based on what everybody else has done. I wanted to be seen as a human being. And as I started to get in touch with the community a little bit more, I realized how unique we actually are and how I'm not the only one that wants to share that voice. And after a little light went off, a little switch went off, and I said, this was beautiful for me. I got in touch with my we call them breasties. So if you have a friend in the cancer community and the breast cancer community, you call them your breastie. And I really had my one breastie in the community. I wasn't very involved in the community at that point, and she was. She actually started a nonprofit who is helping sponsor my event. But her and I sat down one day, and I said, I did this portrait, and this was really cathartic for me. Do you think you'd want to try it? And before I even finished the sentence, immediately she was in. She was like, absolutely, I'm down, 100%. So
Nice.
she came over, we made a portrait, and then we actually took it. I uploaded it into my iPad where she's going to be writing in Procreate. We brought it down to the park, and we sat outside for 3 hours. I just laid there and watched the world go by, and she sat there and wrote. And I thought that, I had a list of questions kind of prepped and ready to go, thinking that I would have to prompt her to, kind of help her remember some pieces of her journey and see what else she might want to add to this. But no, within those 3 hours, she just continued to write. She looked up at me twice, and one of those was because she had to pee, and the other was because she forgot how to spell a word. So, at that point, I knew that there was something really special about this because she was so invested in what she was doing. And I think she, at that point, started to hear herself too, just like I felt myself, or I heard myself. So I think that's when it clicked for me that this was something really special.
Yeah, yeah, and it is. Yeah, this is important. I've seen the projects where people kind of, sort of expand on this. A while ago I did an interview with a woman who was a victim of abuse, from within the family, and she wanted. And there are nuances in there, as I've learned through that conversation. There are nuances in when you're a survivor of that trauma. There are nuances within how you feel about it and how you interact with other people and how you tell other people about it that lay people don't really understand or internalize. You kind of have, walk through the minefield in order to understand how scary it is in the minefield and try to articulate that to other people. So this project it kind of resonated with me in a lot of ways because my family has had cancer in it over the past couple of years. We lost my older sister to cancer, my daughter-in-law to
I'm so
cancer.
sorry.
Yeah, my other older sister. I had two sisters. My surviving older sister, I guess, is a breastie. So she is a
Yeah.
survivor. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and meanwhile, all this is going on through COVID. So imagine the
Right.
hospital situation
Yes.
with quarantine and only certain people can go in during certain times, and yeah, it
Yes.
was crazy. So yeah, so I get all that. So so thank you for doing this project. I think it's really, really important for people to have this view into how it all happens and how they're feeling and to sympathize with other people that are on different, let's say, different points on their journey with the disease, and how to deal with it and how other
Yeah.
people have dealt with it so they can kind of internalize and deal with it themselves. Yeah, and I'm going to bring this photo up. This is your website here. So this is ericarobinsonphoto.com, and this is your Under the Pencil Cancer Project. So, and this is the first photo you were talking about before, this one right here. So
Yep.
just to geek out for a quick second here. So looking at this photo, you mentioned Procreate, and you didn't say, yeah, I just took this photo and then I went and sat down at my Mac and I edited in Lightroom or Capture One or whatever, Photoshop. You just said, like, nonchalantly, yeah, I took this photo and then I grabbed my iPad and I started editing it, and. So is that your flow? Like, is your flow mobile now, or was that just for this one I'm going to do it?
No, it is mobile now. So I have a Westcott lighting setup that I purchased after Christian, my breastie, after she did her portrait, and I knew this was going to be something unique. I went all in and I got a Westcott lighting setup. And typically, how the day goes. I mean, the process is quite long because the women that I've so far worked with, some of them have never met, most of them have never met me in person before. We've talked online, and I haven't put this out there as far as, I haven't reached out to people necessarily to do this. They've all found me because you have to be ready for this type of project.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really vulnerable thing. You should be really ready for it. So they typically have found me, and when they come to the studio, we end up talking for probably a good hour before we even make any photos, because I have to get to know them and what they're trying to share in order to help them be in front of a camera in a way that they're going to be proud of, and in a way that they're going to feel that they were able to share their narrative. Because you can't just do, like, I mean, portraits at a wedding, and engagement portraits, and kids and family portraits. They're beautiful, but those types of poses don't really translate over to these types of portraits. So
Yeah.
a lot of the photos that end up working actually are the ones that we didn't think were going to be the one. Like, you have this picture in your head about what the outcome's going to be, and it doesn't usually end up being that. But so, yeah, we spend a good hour or so together just talking about our situations, about our lives, and who we are, and what we're trying to share, and the pain and the beauty in all of it. And then we make portraits, and I let that take as long as it has to take until we both feel ready and say, okay, I think there's one in there that feels good. And I show them the back of my camera the whole time. I'm working on getting a tethered system, but that will take a little while. But I show them the images the whole time to make sure they see what they look like and what's going on. From there, I uploaded them into my computer, and I actually use Lightroom to allow them the full ability to cull through. So they do it on their own. So I explain to them a little bit about Lightroom so they can see their whole film strip. And then I have them go through and advance and go back and forth and rate ones. And then we go back through and we rate twos. We go back through and we rate threes. And we go through until we find one that is the one that feels like it's the most them. And after they choose that, it goes up into my iPad. I don't do any editing from there. It just goes right into my iPad, into Procreate, and Procreate's an illustration tool. And so I have my pencil, my Apple Pen, and they just write. And I explain to them a little bit about Procreate. It's a really simple program that the only kind of three things that they're going in between is the different layers, the different colors, and then the thickness of the pen. So it's a pretty simple program to get into, and they just write. They hang out here at my apartment, or we go sit on the porch, or we go to the park, and they get a chance to really actually say what they're trying to say with no photographer, like with no other artist bias in there. They are physically doing the writing. And I think that's what's so unique and beautiful about it, is that I'm not putting my words into it. They're physically doing the writing.
Yeah, I was looking at these. I was wondering if that was the case. The handwriting on here. I was wondering how that happened. Was it done in Photoshop? Did you just have them scribble on a piece of paper and then you brought it in, kind of passage by passage, or what? Or was it already written on a cove, or did you have a piece of clear glass in front of them and then they wrote on that? So yeah, I was wondering.
That's kind of cool. I like that.
You see? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
those glass whiteboards. Yeah, no, this is cool. So, and they all look so at ease, though. Like all the folks that you're interviewing and doing these portraits of, they look comfortable in front of the camera. So when I look at a series like this is one of those areas where you have to be in the club in order to do this kind of photography, right? You can't like like I couldn't go in there and do this shot. Like this is not this is not accessible to me as a photographer, or even as a photojournalist, to do this kind of shot, because you have to be in the club and understand and sympathize with what's going on. And then there's being a female to get, that vulnerable level of shots, because you don't want that like modesty coming in between you and the camera and kind of obscuring the message that you're trying to tell. So, you can empathize and all that drops away, and you do the photography. And all these
There's
were
a lot
shot
of
with
those steps, though. Yeah, for sure. It's a lot. It's they come to me, right? So like I would never want to pressure this on somebody, because you have to be ready for it. So I wait, if they know the project's available and then they come to me and say, yes, I want to do it. And some women have changed their mind and then they come back a month later. great.
Yeah.
Like you have to be ready. And they know that coming into it. So there isn't any sort of surprise. Right. And I try and
Yeah.
give them as much information as possible so there is no surprise. So that all has a lot to do with it too. I want them to be comfortable with this. I did this project. I was in front of the camera too. So I want them to know that this is a safe space for them.
So take us through the journey of these photographs, or the journey in one of these one of your the participants in the project here, from contact to all the way through to, okay, we're done. What's that, generally speaking? What's that flow? Like, either they contact you or you reach out to them, and then what happens all the way through?
So they do reach out to me, whether that's through a family member who has found my website somewhere, or Instagram. All my work's on Instagram, and a lot of that is shared through other breast cancer forums and nonprofits. And so, kind of just through word of mouth, they've found the project somehow and have reached out and say, "Hey, like, I would love to do this. I'm interested. Can you tell me more?" And I give them as much information about the project as possible, and then we actually, there's only been two or three women that I've met in person before the photo shoot, before we actually do the shoot itself.
Mm.
Most of the women we've met the day of the photo shoot. So before they come, I kind of give them a document of expectations, not just with a phone number and an address and a time to show up, but I give them a document of expectations of, these are some things you might want to think about before we make photographs.
Yeah.
What do you feel is different now about your cancer experience than it was when it first began? What stage are you in your cancer process? Are you still in treatment? Are you out of treatment? What type of language and what type of vocabulary feels fitting to you when you think about your cancer journey? And I just kind of give them a laundry list of questions that kind of helps spark those feelings towards our situation. And those are some kind of really helpful starting points, because I know that it can be overwhelming when you think about your entire cancer journey, right? Like we said earlier, it's not something you just turn on and off. Like, it's with you for the rest of your life. No matter if you like it or not, it's with you in some capacity for the rest of your life. So things can be kind of at the forefront one day and then in the back of your mind the next day. So all these questions I kind of think help to keep those organized. And then we choose a date to get together, and they come to my house and we talk for a really long time and we make photos, and a lot of us laugh, a lot of us cry. There's a lot that happens, and these sessions can take anywhere from, like, the minimum has been about 3 hours, max has been about 6 hours. So sometimes they take a while. And a lot of what's kind of going through them that day. And one of the kind of beautiful additions to this, that one of my greatest friends from back home in Boston, she's a brilliant author and journalist. And when I kind of brought this project to her and I showed her what I was doing on the iPad, she actually had a beautiful idea that, because this is a digital concept and because it's layered in Procreate, so the art itself has the black writing layer, which is all of the medical jargon, the blue writing layer, which is more of the emotional side of it, and then the base layer, which is their image itself. But she had a beautiful idea that, because this is a digital layered file, if one of these women calls me in a year, in 5 years, and 10 years, and says, "Hey, I have more. I need to write more. I have more thoughts." We can go back in and they can choose another color and we can write back on top of that. So it's something that can continue. I have everybody sign and date after they've finished doing all of their writing. So that's their kind of first rendition. I know that the woman you see in the top left corner there, Janet, she was in a specific time of her treatment where she was very ready to do this, but knew that there might be more, because she had just finished her egg fertility retrieval at that point, and she hadn't even yet started chemo. And so there's going to be a lot of change from one step to the next in your journey. And so we've talked about, maybe at some point, once she's in a good place and ready and interested in saying more, that's when we'll go back in and we'll add another layer to what she wants to share.
Yeah, so much, so much. See, like six
Yeah.
hours, and I wouldn't imagine it going anything shorter than that, right? Because it's not just a photo session. Like come in here, sit there, 3/4 lighting, hair light, boom, look at the bird, like
Right.
yeah, send me my money, whatever. It's more of a connection in a lot of ways, just helpful kind of peer to peer therapy where people can
Yes.
have a conversation going back and forth with somebody who's on a different path in their journey. And with that different path, like if someone like there are lots of different kinds of cancer, right, that people can get. How do you feel the need to manage generalizing the just the overall effect of the big C word, and without getting into the minutia of what it is for each particular person? Is it like, how do you approach this? Is it just, okay, you got the C word or you're being affected by the C word? Now, let's discuss it and figure out how you're feeling about it and make the portrait, or do you need to be more nuanced than that when it comes to the different kinds of cancer that someone may be afflicted with?
So I do actually have to be more nuanced than that. There are, one of the questions we talk about when we're getting ready to actually make the photos is what they want physically to show. So not necessarily just what their face is going to say, but physically.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's cancer being different. We have different surgeries. Some of us have lumpectomy. Some of us have mastectomy. Some of us have double mastectomies. Some of us have expanders in. Some of us had radiation. Some didn't. Some have burns from that radiation. Some didn't. Some have nipples. Some don't. There's so many different physical attributes to this that I have to take into account. And, I tell them when we, first start making photos that this is just as much a challenge for me, because if, let's say one woman wants to make sure that she shows her radiation markers on her side or on her chest bone, but another woman doesn't want to show that, right? We have to move and we have to pose in a way where we are showing exactly what she wants to show without too much. So when I did
Mm-hmm.
my portrait, I was trying to physically show my radiation markers and my actually have burns in my armpit. The radiation, because of where my tumor was at, the radiation came in from 3 different sides, and it burned a line through the middle of my armpit. So my armpit
Oh,
hair only grows on one side in one direction, and it grows at different times.
wow.
So at that point, I had stopped shaving so that I could visually show that, because I was trying to actually test in my mind, okay, well, if I shave my whole armpit today, how long does it take to grow? And does the top grow longer than the bottom and all that? So I actually had my hand in that position so that I could show the radiation marker going through. Um, and so yeah, it is more nuanced than that, because there are different boundaries that we each have, both physically and mentally, in the sense where there is a vulnerability on showing everything, and
Mm-hmm.
it takes a lot internally to know that that's going to be public. So yes, it's definitely, it's a puzzle for each of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, everything is unique, right? And especially here,
Mm-hmm.
like, where is there a like, where do you draw the line when it comes to like how much is too much when you're sharing this stuff? Like how deep and how personal do you go? Whether it's with another survivor or if it's with someone, a civilian, let's say, where is the line that you draw, or is there, like, is it no holds barred? What do you think?
I think it's different every time. It really
Yeah,
is. Depends on my mood, really.
yeah,
But
yeah.
there are some people that you can feel an energy from, that you are completely comfortable and open to talking about things, and that they are ready to receive that information. And then there are other people that are, when they ask you how you're doing, you can definitely feel that they're just asking you for oh, I'm great, how are you? And that's okay. This is a lot of information. And that was actually part of the beginning of this project for me, was that when someone would ask me how I'm doing, you know, there's a lot. That could be a minute, or that could be 6 hours. How much time do you have? So it was me trying to share the overwhelmed without overwhelming someone. And
Mm-hmm.
that was where the writing came in, was that here, if you want to see what's going on, everything is right here. It's a visual. Everything's right in front of you. You don't have to, sit and listen to it necessarily, but you can visualize all of it right there. And I can put it out all at once instead of feeling like I'm constantly the topic, or I'm constantly the one that's giving too much information. And I think it's different every time I have a conversation with someone.
Yeah, it's a give and take, right? It's back and forth. Yeah, and you kind of feel it out as you're. There's like this conversation. You kind of you play off the energy from the other person, and you kind of feel what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and we find our way, even non-verbally sometimes, of what's appropriate with an individual, and it may be completely inappropriate to talk about a certain subject with this person, whereas the next person is completely open and free about it, and you never know until you kind of tap your way through there. You,
Yeah.
if my notes are right, you were or are a competitive swimmer. Is that right? And are you? So, and how does that affect this work? And does it?
Oh, it definitely does. Yeah, so I was a swimmer for 20 years up through college, and then after that, I was into weightlifting. I did CrossFit for a
Nice.
while. I
Wow.
was into Oli lifting. So I've been involved in fitness nearly my whole life. And when I was diagnosed, and actually up until recently, like I've had a very difficult, difficult friendship with food,
Mm.
because you constantly hear, as someone who now has a chronic illness, like you constantly hear you should be eating healthy and you should be exercising and doing all these things to keep you healthy. And if I if I had one more medical professional tell me that, I was gonna lose my mind, because there's not many more ways that I can say, like, I barely drink. I drink like 2 or 3 times a year, and I still got cancer. So
Yeah.
I had a really difficult relationship with that. And a lot of that became visual because I lost like 15 pounds and it was all muscle. And I have struggled to figure out if and how I want a relationship with food and with fitness again. And yes, I do. But it's complicated. So that definitely added to just the overall concept of this, because it's your mindset. It's not just it's not a perfect equation every day. It's your mindset, and it's trying to show someone that, yes, I lost all of this weight, and yes, I may, look healthy, for whatever look healthy in the sense of the word means, but there's so much going on up inside our brains that's, not always the case. And we need to be really gentle with everyone who's walking around, because everyone is a story. Everyone has their own. Everyone is their own story, and I'm living with that every single day. So yeah, it's I as much as I love fitness and I will always be involved in fitness, it comes and goes with how I involve myself in that now.
Yeah, and the people around the survivors or people that are dealing with cancer now are also those people that you have to kind of understand what they're going through. Because I remember when we first found out about my sister having it, and it was a particularly aggressive form, right? So it was fast. And I remember thinking, well, this can't be right, because she's like one of the best people I know on the planet. She doesn't smoke. She doesn't drink. She goes to church. She does all of it, doesn't even curse. Like, she's like one of those people that they don't really
Oh,
make anymore. And how is isn't this stuff, isn't it supposed to be like the people that are, bad or doing bad things or living life recklessly or drinking all the time or doing drugs or whatever? Shouldn't they get it? Well, why is this person getting it who has lived her whole life on this side? And if she can get it, then I'm doomed, right? That's what I was thinking, because she's better than I am, and if she can get it, then the rest of us can just hang it up. Like that piece of it, and just kind of understanding, or trying to understand. I still understand it, but just understanding that it's completely random was a struggle, right? It's still a struggle, because you always learn, hey, do the right thing, eat your vegetables, be nice to people, do unto others, yada yada, whatever, right? You hear all that stuff your entire life, until, it just doesn't bear out with the randomness of the universe we live in. So do you find that like dealing with the people that are kind of in the periphery of the person that is directly affected by the disease, that they're part of the story as well when you're, kind of working through this and having those conversations with these women?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because their friends and family and their situation is all part of the equation, right?
Yeah. Yep.
It makes, it getting or having a chronic illness like this, like really brings you into neutral human form, remembering that we are all the same. We are
Yeah.
all absolutely the same. And there is no one specific type of person who gets this at all.
Right.
So yes,
Right.
it is, it's definitely a reminder that, or it is important that I note that their friends and family and their circumstances around them are a piece of what they are writing. It's a piece of what they're putting onto this. Um,
Yeah.
I was very, very fortunate that so my sister and my mom actually moved out to California for a few months to help take care of me.
Mm.
And this was, still during a bit of COVID time. So I was only allowed to have one person in the treatment room with me, and my sister was my proxy. She's a biologist. She's in the sciences, and she understands this stuff really well. And she's also my closest advocate for anything. She is the most amazing person I know. And she came out here and took care of me for a really long time. And she was just starting a job, and she had just gotten engaged. Like, she had a lot going on herself. And I constantly was feeling or I constantly was empathetic and understanding to what her role as a caretaker is, watching her watch me go through this type of situation. It's very complex, and it's different for everybody. So when I first started treatment, my first chemo treatment, I had to fight to have both my mom and my sister in the room because it was still COVID times, and I was only allowed to have one person with me.
Yep.
And then there are, one of the other women that I worked with, she wasn't allowed to have anyone. She wasn't allowed to have anyone her entire treatment. She got sick right at the beginning of COVID, could barely even find a doctor, and she wasn't allowed to have anyone the entire time, all throughout chemo, all throughout radiation, all throughout surgery, nothing. They had to leave her at the door. And so that definitely, like, a lot of what we're writing isn't just the physical, I had surgery, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
the next level emotional aspect to that is, I had surgery, but I did it alone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that definitely comes into play in all of this.
Wow. What do you think is one of the most, if not the most, misunderstood aspect of, from external or outside people when someone is diagnosed with cancer? What do you think is there an aspect that you've seen repeatedly that you just don't understand, or you're saying the wrong thing, or this is how you talk to somebody who has just been diagnosed? Like, have you seen any patterns that happen?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of them. We could go
Mm.
on like a whole hour about that. There's a lot of them. And it's not because anyone is right or wrong. That's the thing. Like, I've said so many times during this that two things can be true. And friends have told that to me, and then I've stolen that saying because it is perfect for this situation. Two things can be true the entire time. But there's also we're all kind of learning this at a different pace. We're all navigating it in a different way. We are not robots. We are individual, unique beings. That's what makes this project so beautiful. But there's a great podcast called Thanks Cancer that I was listening to when I was in treatment, and they have a really great episode on the things people say, both on the patient side and on the caretaker side, or an advocate in some way, someone who's involved with a cancer. Because none of us know the right thing to say. It's
Right.
like what somebody could say to me an hour from now could be perfectly fine with me. But if they say that same thing in a week or a year, it could feel awful. So
Mm.
there is just no right thing to say. Yeah, it's just different for everyone. So there isn't any right way necessarily, but it's just about, I think, just being gentle and accepting that when, I definitely bit back at my, best friends and my family and my people who were taking care of me. I bit back a lot because I was not used to being someone that needed to be taken care of. I was not used to being asked if I was okay all the time, or physically needing things and not being able to get out of bed. I wasn't used to people trying to feed me. I wasn't used to any of that. So I definitely had to take a step back and accept those things. But I bit back. I was not the easiest patient for a little while. And I think on my side, I then had to kind of come back to, okay, like, let's talk. Let me either like apologize for what I said, or make sure that we are, on the right page. I didn't mean to bite back at you. Like, I'm confused. I'm hurt and I'm confused and I need a minute. It's not you. Yeah. So
And by the way, that thumbs up you just saw was your computer with the new Mac OS. If you make certain gestures like a thumbs up, it will
what?
it will put
That's what that was?
that's what it was. If you put a thumbs up or a thumbs down, it will overlay an animation on your video. You can turn it off, but it defaults to on, I think.
Does it give me two?
There you go. Oh, see,
Yes!
2 thumbs up. Yeah,
Oh,
there
okay.
you go.
Wow.
So, you have
Good to
superpowers.
know. That's new. Okay.
Thank
I
you,
thought for
Apple.
a minute, I was like, oh, did we switch and somebody's listening into this? Because, okay, if they are,
Right, yeah,
but
that's why I wanted to tell you, because I was like, no, this is not, we're not recording live, and you're like, oh, people are thumbs upping this. He told me it wasn't live. No, that's your camera doing that. Yeah, so yeah, on that, I'm just curious. I think in your, I don't know if it was your bio or on your website, but you mentioned that you are sarcastic, and you have a quick wit. And you are, what do you say, Bostonian? So you're from Boston. So how does that all play into? Because I'm picturing that scene with you, in the hospital in the bed, being like, oh, they said the wrong thing, and you're kind of like in that mode. Like, how does it come out? I'm curious. Like, are you just like, every other word is an F-bomb, and you just get out of here? Like, what?
yeah, I don't want you to have to censor a lot of this, so I'm going to
It's
keep
okay.
the swearing to a minimum.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it came out a lot when I was mostly frustrated with my medical team, or frustrated with medical professionals. I switched oncologists a few times, and that's
Mhm.
something that, patients need to be aware of, is to advocate for your health, your safety, advocate for yourself. And I was not comfortable with a certain medical team. And at this point, the conversation that I was having was with a male oncologist who is, I'm sure, absolutely brilliant and wonderful at his job, but our personalities just didn't match very well. And this was at the point where I was trying to, like, you're getting information almost like you're getting hard information almost every 2 weeks, right? So from
Mhm.
biopsy to mammogram to one piece of the diagnosis to another piece of the diagnosis, like everything's just kind of like compiling on. It's like every 2 weeks you're getting a new piece of information, and
Mhm.
that that becomes really that's heavy after a while. It's a lot to hold, and this oncologist was telling me that I would be able to tolerate a certain medication well, and I would be able to tolerate it. And I was the language for me is really important because that can be taken a lot of different ways. And I have a full sleeve tattoo. This took 18 plus hours. I can tolerate 18 hours of needles being stabbed into my skin. I can tolerate 18 hours of a full sleeve tattoo, but everyone has a different level of tolerate. So what does tolerate mean? With this medication that I'm going to go on, this medication is going to throw me into menopause at 35 years old. And
Mm.
that has a profound effect on your mental health. You are going into chemically induced menopause where your body hasn't been prepped for this. So your body hasn't been ready to say, okay, we're starting to slowly shut things down. We're going to start to slowly go to sleep. No, a chemical comes in and tells your brain to turn off your ovaries at 35 years old. And
Yikes.
that leads to hot flashes. That leads to insomnia. I wouldn't sleep for weeks. I had maybe an hour every now and then. Like, I didn't sleep for a very long time. Hot flashes, night sweats, insomnia, memory loss, not just a physical toll, but a mental toll. And so he's telling me that I'm going to tolerate this. And then I'm asking about, okay, well, what are some things that I can do that aren't in pill form, and what are some supplements that aren't in pill form that I can take to kind of help me with this process, so I'm not just completely trashing my body. And they would just continue to say yoga and meditation. And if I had one more medical professional tell me yoga and meditation, I was going to light them on fire. So talk about being sarcastic. I like,
Hmm.
obviously I'm not going to light anybody on fire.
No,
But
no.
it became really frustrating because
Yeah.
I I'm a white girl in Southern California. I'm well aware of what yoga and meditation is. Like,
Right.
we stole it from everybody. I'm here in Southern California. I'm aware of what that is. And if that was the case, uh, I wouldn't have cancer in the first place. So that's not going to be the thing to cure me. And so those were my like kind of like quip moments where I just kind of came in hard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That, and I can't imagine the way you described it. So a male oncologist or physician telling you that, okay, take this pill. Yeah, sure, early menopause. Yeah, you'll deal with it just fine. Somebody that cannot and has not dealt with it. Right? Telling
Yes.
you, the person in the situation, as he does his rounds, that, hey, just take this one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's, yeah,
Right.
whatever. It'll do these things, but it's not a big deal. As they move on. Yeah, I would have been pissed too. I probably would have had a couple of choice words. So yeah, that's a journey. Yeah, and you think that at least me, from my own personal dealings with this stuff, I had a certain level of expectation of I don't know. I'm picking my words, right? Because I had a certain expectation of medical professionals having aptitude, I guess, in certain areas, right? And it was like, I remember, because I'm like the nerd, right? I'm like, okay, she's got this. Let me read everything there is to know. Let me get online. Let me watch videos and kind of get myself up to speed on what's happening. And I was asking them questions that they didn't have answers to. I'm like, you went to school. You're an oncologist. I'm on YouTube, and it says this right here. Can you So the frustration from that, I think, especially if you're the person that's affected, I can't comprehend how you deal with that when you're at their beck and call and they're feeding you and they're making decisions about you and all this stuff, and they may or may not be incompetent. So that's. Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. And you've got a Bostonian kind of wit and sarcasm to mix in there.
We're just
So
a little feisty sometimes,
it's
we're
a
just
little
a little
bit.
feisty.
It's a little
But
bit. It's a
if
little
it
bit.
does like help just to, kind of bring it back to neutral for them, like I really do respect my medical team very much. And
Yeah.
just remember
Yeah.
it is practicing medicine. I had to regularly say that, like, we are not all built exactly the same. We're not robots, so I understand that there's a practice to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to find the doctor that's done practicing. It's like, I got it. I'm a pro now, and all that practicing stuff. All those people I practiced on, they led me to here, and now I can do my thing. I'm joking. I'm joking. Yeah, medical professionals. I have a huge respect for medical professionals. Just the few, that some of the ones that I had to deal with my sister just weren't. They weren't. Let's just say they weren't on the team very long. We'll say that. And
Oh
then we
no.
moved on. Yeah, yeah. So back to Under the Pencil. So the project itself, there's an event involved. Take me through it. Someone who's just now been exposed to Under the Pencil and this whole thing, they're listening to our conversation, they're intrigued, they're going to head over to your website and your socials and kind of see what's going on. Tell them about what's coming up with Under the Pencil, how is the event going to manifest, and then what's next for the project in the future.
Sure. Thank you.
Hmm.
So Under the Pencil has so far been a very one-on-one personal project, and it will continue to be that. But I want also to make sure that these stories are heard around the world, that they are heard, that the women who have participated have felt heard, and that they know that they're appreciated, that their hard work, their investment is there. So I'm going to be holding an event on November 5th at a place called Bivouac Cidery in downtown San Diego. Um, from 2 to 5 in the afternoon. You can find it on my website if anybody's interested in coming along. It is open to the public. It has two parts. So the first part is sort of like a photo gallery, right? So the 15 women who have been photographed, I will be photographing the last of the 15 next week. So the 15 women who have been photographed already will be printed in full life size, 24 by 36 on core board and gator board, displayed from the ceiling instead of displayed from a wall perspective. So it's going to be displayed from the ceiling. That way, when visitors come to see these prints, they have to interact with the art in a way that it's a different type of approach. You have a different type of interaction with that art. So they're going to be displayed hanging from the ceiling. And then the second part of that is the more interactive part, where I'm going to have a private photo booth set up, a photo studio, and a printer. And whoever, if there are women who have been diagnosed who haven't been able to be a part of this project yet and would like to be a part of this project, they can come into the studio, be photographed. And I'm hiring in my wonderful friend, Heather Crut, who is a talented artist, a talented printer. She's also a rep in the photo industry. She's going to be coming in to print on site. So women can physically write on their prints there. So it won't be on the iPad anymore. It'll be physically written. So I'll have the markers there. And then we'll digitize them and they'll get hung up with everybody else in the gallery. That way they are kind of part of they're part of this beautiful group, and anyone who wants to participate can participate. So there's two aspects to it, and both are just as important, playing off of each other. I'm very, very excited. And I think what's most exciting for me is that all of the women who have been photographed so far, everyone will be there except for one that I know of. Unfortunately, she already has a prior commitment, so she won't be there, but they will all be together in the same room with their families, with their friends. It's, like I said, a public event, so anyone can join. And seeing them able to interact together, most of them don't know each other. Only a few of them do, and a few of them just met recently. So it'll be nice to really have them all together.
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds like a good event. So the just restate the location and the dates, and of course we'll put the links to everything in the blog post or the show notes for this episode, and over to your website as well. But just for those who are listening and scratching down things on a piece of paper, what are the dates and the location, city, etc.?
So that's going to be at Bivouac Cidery in San Diego. From 2 to 5 in the afternoon on Sunday, November 5th.
There you go. Perfect. All right. And then what's next? I'm guessing, I feel like there's a book in this, like a photo book. Is that the next step for this? You think, have you considered that?
I have considered that. I would love that. I would absolutely love that. Yeah. I'm going to take a little break in December from this just for a minute. So after the event in November, I'm going to take a little break just to kind of recoup. And I have had women reach out from all over. I have a map in Google Maps listed, overlaid with different pins where women have reached out from that can't be here to be photographed. And the idea with the fundraising actually is not just to support the current production, but also to potentially travel in, to fly in or train in or drive in a woman who would like to participate from out of state to be able to participate at the event. Because there are people who have reached out from all over the world. I have people in the UK recently reach out and say, hey, do you plan on bringing this to the UK? Because we would really love to participate in this. And so I think that there's a big world out there for this, and I'm ready to see it expand, and I'm ready to see it make a difference in people's lives. Both people who are directly affected by cancers and who are indirectly affected by cancers. Like our conversation today, I really appreciate you being invested in being curious about this topic and not being afraid to ask questions and being intrigued by it, because it's not limited to anyone. It affects everyone. So
everyone on the planet, and it's not going away as far as I know. Right? It's going to be here for a minute. So you or someone will likely, knock on wood, not to wish anything on anybody, but the likelihood of people being affected even tangentially by the disease is very high. So yeah,
Very
it's
much.
a yeah. Thank goodness for every day that you have that you don't have a diagnosis, because then yeah, we kind of know what happens behind that. Let's wrap up with this, Erica. What like where how are you feeling right now? So what, like, just personally, where are you in your journey, and how are you feeling right now, and what does the future feel like for you, both as just a carbon-based life form and as a creative? Like, what's the status?
Ooh, well, I'm really proud of what has happened with my last few years of life. I would not be the same person today had I not been affected by cancer directly like I was. I have made a lot of change in my life, and I'm very happy to still be changing and be ready to face whatever comes next. So I think that I'm feeling very proud of my last few years and very excited for what's to come, both within this project and outside of this project. Hey, I'm leaving the TWiP workshop next week in Iceland, actually. So I will be in one of the most beautiful places in the world, hopefully dancing under the northern lights, teaching some other wonderful photographers how to do the same. So I am really excited to just continue with life with what I know now, because I know more right now than I did 10 minutes ago, than I did 6 hours ago, than I did 6 months ago. So I'm just excited to keep going.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And that's good. And like I said, I know we talked a couple of weeks ago in our pre-interview. Happy to carry bags in Iceland if you need help there,
Right.
assistant, can scout out some volcanoes or whatever. Whatever. Just be part of the photographic group that's running around. Are they done? Like, I know Iceland had some seismic or some volcanic activity over there recently. Is all that kind of settled down, or? Yeah.
I don't know that I want to make any clear statement, because I feel like the second I do, something's going to pop off. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
they're just one giant volcano. And
It
don't quote me
is.
on that.
Yeah.
I am not a geologist, but I'm
Yeah.
fairly certain that it is the most volcanically active place on Earth. I did just read that Alaska is incredibly volcanically and earthquake prone. So
As is
there's that.
Yellowstone.
But
Yeah.
no, that too.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
But
a caldera underneath Yellowstone, which is basically a giant lake of lava that's waiting it's
great.
waiting to, like, decimate parts of the Midwestern and Western United States, or at least change the
Let's not
geography.
add to any more catastrophes that are going on
Oh,
in the world. No,
yeah.
we're just going to
That's
let that
not
one
going to
simmer for
happen.
a minute. Mm-mm.
Yeah. You will have no problems in Iceland, trust me. Okay, well, cool. So, yeah, so we'll link over to your website and all that stuff, and of course this project. And yeah, we'll leave it there. Thank you for putting this together, and I'm looking forward to buying that book. So make sure you get when you're on the plane to Iceland, we start working on the strategy and the outline for the book. So we can start buying it. Yeah, the
Oh,
book
for
needs to be
sure. I
made.
will. I'll make sure that you're inscribed in there. This is to
Yeah.
Frederick. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you. Somewhere in there, somewhere, it could even be in code or something. Just stick it in there somewhere. A little QR
And
code.
also,
Just stick a little QR code in there.
yes. Oh my God, yes. And then it can just be a little video of you that plays when the QR code comes
Done.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. Rickroll.
Perfect.
So, all right. Anything else you want to throw out there to the audience?
I want to make sure that I thank the people who have already been involved in this project. I've been working with Bay Photo, who is going to sponsor the prints that will be printed at the event. And these beautiful prints are going to be gifted to the women who are a part of it. So I want to make sure that I really thank them, because without them, this would be 10 times more difficult. And I am so grateful that they are a part of it. I really want to thank Pink Strength, my local San Diego nonprofit, who, again, without them, this would be 10 times more difficult. They are like these little elves behind the scenes that just put together so much for the AYA, the adolescent and young adult breast cancer community in San Diego. So Pink Strength, thank you so much. And Christian, co-founding president of Pink Strength, my bestie from the community. If it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have left the house. So there's that. and my friend Heather Crutt, who's going to be coming in doing the printing at the event. My friend Sarah Strict, who's going to be coming in and doing the video for the event. I have just such a big, beautiful team, and my family, my mom and my sister, who took me all through treatment, and my sister, my mom, who's still putting up with me today with all of my stuff. So I know that most of my family will be coming out to the event, and I'm just so grateful. So yes, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Pleasure's all mine. You got to come back and tell us about the Iceland trip and how that went, and just generally keep in touch on the project and the book and all that stuff. You know, see, I'm subliminally putting the book in there. Yeah, I'm putting it.
I will. You are, and I noticed you slipped Iceland in there again. I feel like I'm just going to show up. You're going to be on the plane already, so.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how'd you get in the seat? You know? No, I wish I could go. I really wish I could go. Okay, so we'll leave it right there. Erica Robinson, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey with us, and being so inspiring, and using photography as a tool, you know, your superpower of photography as a tool to help other people. So thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you, and thank you to everyone who's listening.